Hello, welcome inside the scores table, the final edition of the of the season with all of us together. After this, it's all postseason stuff. Brian Haenchen, Josh Sabol, Danny Riego, Courtney Delks here with you. We're here to do some championship game picks. We were taping this on Wednesday. It's going to air on Friday, so if anything changes between now and Friday that would have influenced our picks and we don't address it, that's why. It's because we're recording this on a Wednesday. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to start here in Class A, where you have Lanesville taking on Marquette Catholic. Josh, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we were able to have Coach on yesterday, and she was fantastic. I think, Marquette Catholic definitely has a pedigree. They've won 2 state championships in the last 5 years. But this team is really, really young. Sophomore Nia Davis averages 20 points a game. She had 31 points in the semi-state championship. But I just think Lanesville is too tough. I mean, all year long they've been playing against really top competition. Hadley Crozier is leading the way, and one of the big things for me when I'm looking at these games is shooting and turnovers. And right now, after 29, maybe 30 games, Lanesville's only turning it over 7.6 times a game. So not only are they phenomenal on the defensive end, but they take care of it. And I expect Lanesville big.
Courtney?
I'm going with the Eagles, Lanesville. I think that they are soaring above the competition right now, and I loved having Coach from Marquette on yesterday. I thought that her energy was fantastic. I love the underdog mentality, the why not us culture that they have, and I'm rolling with the Eagles from Lanesville.
Courtney Delks is the coach from Marquette Catholic. You can check out our interview with her both on IndyStar.com. I have it clipped off, and then as well on the YouTube channel. Danny, who you got in that game?
I've got Lanesville. I mean, I think there's going to be a theme of zone teams here. I mean, that's kind of foreshadows where we're going. But I like teams that have identities. I've talked about that through the course of the podcast season. And they definitely have an identity with this matchup amoeba that they run. But I would encourage the audience, please watch Hadley Crozier. I mean, we've said sentences like Hadley Crozier can insert herself into a Miss Basketball argument. At the very least, she's going to be in the All-Star argument. But you can't run zones as intricate as Lanesville does from a matchup perspective unless you have somebody a captain and a quarterback at the top of it that you can play off of. And Hadley Crozier is that for Lanesville. So when you turn that on Saturday morning, please watch Hadley Crozier. She's earned your set of eyes as girls basketball fans. She'll get her game off. She's awesome. But Lanesville will be the Class A state champ. And I do give flowers to Katie Clignan. Josh mentioned it. She's probably going to be back at Gainbridge. I mean, it's like 3 of 5 years, and Josh mentioned their youth. So hopefully we can next year.
Third time in, I think her 8 seasons as head coach now at Gainbridge Fieldhouse for Katie Clignan, which is really impressive. And it feels like this is the start of a multi-year run for them, something similar to what Lanesville's gone through, except it's probably going to start with a loss, I think, with Lanesville, because I think Lanesville's in the middle of a multi-year run themselves, and I think it's going to continue and has a really good chance of continuing next year at Class 2A. Like, can you imagine what that Lapel Lanesville semi-state potentially could look like? That's going to be unbelievable when you have all those seniors going against the junior Lania Wills and whoever else newbies bringing in. Like, that's just going to be phenomenal entertainment. Or what if Eastern Hancock, and I'm just going with those 2 teams because I know them the best. But yeah, what if it's them? I guess Lapel will be the state championship. Whatever. Point being, Lanesville's doing some special things, and I think that run's going to continue. Echoing what Danny said about Hadley Crozier, and then too Shelby Allen. I didn't get a chance to talk about it a ton, but just the impact and the difference that she's made for that team since coming back from the knee injury she suffered 2 weeks after the state championship game last year. I mean, it's been a night and day difference where they're getting by and surviving against teams like Borden on the road and North Central Farmersburg to just like flipping a switch and kicking it into another gear. And I mean, you see what they did in the rematches against Borden and North Central Farmersburg, where neither of those games were particularly close, and that's because they're back to being a fully healthy team. They have their post inside, then Yad and Crozier, Ava Kerr, and then Hilton Brumley as well. I mean, it's a really special team, and a point that Courtney's brought up too when we watch highlights. Like, they're not a Class A team. They just happen to be that size of school. So special group, special run continues with another state championship for the Lanesville Eagles. Moving on now to the second game of the day, Class 2A, Brownstown Central 21-8, Fort Wayne Bishop Luers 19-6. Courtney, we'll let you take lead on this one.
I'm going with Fort Wayne Luers on this one. I think that throughout the tournament and just the pedigree of their schedule, their program, I think that they are playing really, really good basketball right now. And when I watch them in the semi-state, they're playing with a level of confidence as a team, and it's balanced scoring all around. Everybody is contributing on that team. Addie Shank, Miley Waring, Anika Davis, all those girls are just pouring in at every position. And so I think they're a really tough team to beat right now. So I'm taking Luers.
Danny?
I'm going to take Fort Wayne Luers as well. This will be the second team that identifies on the defensive side with a zone, and they'll give you different looks, very similar to some of the other zone teams we'll talk about. But they'll, they played Columbia City in a 3-2. They pressed in the semi-state, so they'll give you some odd front. And we've talked a lot through the year about Addie Shank and Waring, and their size and their dominance and rebounding. But I also don't want to give a misconception that these are just like big lumbering post players. Like, these are super athletic kids. Like, Waring plays at the point of their 1-3-1. And so, but to have the luxury when you take arguably your best rebounder and put her as far away from the basket as you possibly can, what a luxury to have Shank down there, cleaning up the glass. Because stops are punctuated with defensive rebounds, and to take Waring and put her all the way at the point of the press, I think says a lot to the depth in the front court. Courtney talked about their guard play, but Luers is just going to be too much, I think, for Brownstown Central. I think they're going to have trouble matching them on the glass. But your big what to watch here is the chemistry between Shank and Waring. So turn them on, mid-morning and give them a watch. I think Luers will be the 2A state champ.
Real quick, or Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, first I just want to give Brownstown Central a lot of credit. I mean, they were unranked coming into this tournament. Had huge wins against Austin, huge wins against Eastern Hancock. They're on a magical run right now. Unfortunately, I think they're just going to run into a buzzsaw with Luers. I expect them to win probably like 7 points, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be close. Talking about what Danny was mentioning with the two posts, it was fun talking to Mark Pixley, their coach, about some of the pieces they have with those posts. Like, he talked about Addie Shank, whose family all went through Luers, so she has that legacy factor, which is pretty awesome. But just the post moves that she has, and I mean, she kind of came in as a freshman and had that, so to see her develop, where now she's a 1,000-point scorer and an 800-pound rebound kid, first one in program history, speaks a lot to what she brings to the table. And Miley Waring, Danny mentioned her running the point, and Pixley said that, it's just unbelievable that kid's able to go coast to coast with the ball. And yeah, I didn't realize she was running point for them too, which is quite the statement for a kid who stands at 6'2", folks. She's running point for that. That's unbelievable. And then on the other side, just echoing what Josh said, I mean, phenomenal run. Harley Toppy has had a great game against Eastern Hancock. They did a great job shutting down Kenzie Cook and Ruby White. Among the other weapons, the Ruby White factor was really interesting, and then Austin in that sectional final brings a big post as well. But I think the difference between those two teams and Fort Wayne Luers is that those are just one big and then some guards that you can match up with. Luers has two of those kids who also can do what the guards can do, and that's not even addressing the guard play that Bishop Luers had, which we talked about on our previous show. So I'm also going with Luers in a game that I think will be closer than most expect it to be. But it just feels like there's a lot working against Brownstown Central, a lot working for Luers here. But, I mean, I'll happily eat crow if it goes the other way. And yeah, it's been a great run for Brownstown Central. Moving on now, Class 3A, you have Gibson Southern 25-4 against Norwell 23-4. Our first game of the second session. I think it's the game of the day. Courtney, let's start with you again.
47 years is a long time to win a state championship, to go back to a state championship. 27 years is a long time to coach and not win a state championship. I'm going with Eric Corrin, Norwell. I just think that their program has done it the right way, from their feeder system all the way up. I love the way that Kennedy Fueling, Mackenzie Hughes, how those girls play. I love their guard play. I just love the compete mentality those kids have. And I've worked with within their program when they were younger in their feeder system. and just kind of to see these kids at that state championship level now. I'm super excited for them, and I'm going for the Knights.
Josh.
47 years ago, I think Danny was in college then. Moving on. I think
Shot fired.
He was sitting on that one too. You could tell.
Danny, tell your limo driver you guys are gonna get your double parked right now.
Take it easy. My goodness. Norwell Gibson Southern save. My God.
Okay, so I think Hank is correct. I think this is gonna be the game of the day. And this is my upset special. I actually think Gibson Southern is going to pull it off. I think we've heard a lot about Gabby Spink and Chloe Graham on this pod, rightfully so. But I think and this was Danny's call last week. I think the emergence of Paige Snouch just gives them a whole other element that they did not have a month ago. And I think if you would have asked me before the sectionals, who's going to win 3, I think Norwell would have been the clear cut favorite. But when you add a third piece to this, and she's a front court player to go along with the 2 guards, I think Gibson Southern is playing their best basketball of the year. And this is my upset special. I got Gibson Southern to come out on top and be the 3A state champions.
What about you, Danny?
Well, I'm happy that we have a game that we're disagreeing on. And I'm going to go with Courtney on this one. I'm going to ride Norwell. Josh is right. Gibson Southern is playing great basketball right now, but unfortunately, I just don't think I just think Norwell's playing better. I can't imagine that a team that leads in the semi-state championship 42-4 can play much better. And, Courtney talked about how Eric Thornton has won 11 sectionals. He's twice, I think, advanced past the regional. Sometimes when you break through, it just opens something up. I mean, maybe this is the start of the second half of Eric Thornton's career. But his scheme is remarkable. Like they're so remarkably effective in their 1-1. And so that's again with the theme there. That's the third zone team. This is not an exaggeration. Like in the semi-state championship game against Bremen, it's like 6 turnovers in the first 7 possessions. Like Bremen couldn't do anything. I'm not saying that Bremen is Gibson Southern, but they're remarkably effective. And I talked about Waring at the point. There's a kid named Rossworth who runs all of their action and all of their odd fronts from the point spot. And she is very athletic in getting deflections. She's well worth the watch, but in the end, filling Feast, Hubble, Rossworth, 42-4, Eric Thornton breaking through. I just think Gibson Southern won semi-state in the wrong year. I just think Norwell's a wagon, and I think they're going to win it.
Josh and Danny mentioned all the names that I was going to and all the players that I wrote already in my preview, so that makes mine relatively easy. Love the pieces that Gibson Southern has. Paige Snouch obviously having a great run. I kind of tried to quantify it a little bit in the story. And Kyle Brasher, I mean, this is 6 years in, and he's already going to his first state championship game with a lot of people coming back next year too. They only graduate 2 seniors, and obviously the word "only" does a lot of heavy lifting there when only is your second leading scorer and another senior plays a key role across the course of the season. But for Norwell, more seniors. There's Eric Thornton and how long he's been around. Here's a fun fact: his dad has been to almost every single game of his over the course of his 27-year career, which is pretty amazing when you think about it. I have a story as we're watching this now. Hopefully I've gotten it done already and you're reading it, or read it on Thursday on Kennedy Felling, and just her journey. She didn't play AAU ball before this year, and here she is, the program's all-time leading scorer, a kid who was put in a stroller and brought to games when her mom was coaching high school ball when she was first born. So that's pretty cool to see it come full circle for her. Obviously Eric Thornton storyline, and just that schedule, guys. We've talked about it all year, but Homestead, Snyder, Columbia City, Lawrence North, everybody who's anybody basically on the north side has been on Norwell's schedule, and they only lost one of those games by double digits, and that game was pretty close going into the middle of the third quarter, and that was the Fort Wayne Snyder game. And Snyder is not Gibson Southern. They're just a different type of animal with the athleticism they have in Jordy Poole. So I'm going with Norwell. I think it'll be a really good game, probably some overtimes, but I think at some point Norwell's going to find a little bit of separation just based on that experience and the weapons that they have.
Can I reiterate something that you said, Hank? Thank you for talking about Kyle Brasher. He's been great through this run. And when I watch Gibson Southern games, like he was doing things that were pretty advanced. And I know he hasn't been around as long as Eric Thornton, but I don't want that to be a misconception for how good he's been. If as an example, in your mind's eye, if you can imagine just, Gabby Spink on the right wing, setting a screen on Paige Snouse. He did that because they were switching everything. So he got Paige Snouse in the semi-state championship game a basket in the first play of the third quarter because he recognized that they were switching. So he sets a cross screen with the guard like that. I mean, it's just coaching. It sounds like it's simple stuff, but how come you don't see that stuff all the time then if it's so simple? But I do think that the 1-3-1 is going to take his ability to run that scheme away. Josh talked about it yesterday, how it shortens your playbook. It's going to be really short against that 1-3-1.
Props to anybody who picked up on the Class 2A stats running across the bottom of the board. You get like a prize or something if you notice it. I don't know. Moving on now to Class 4A. I don't know why I felt the need to call attention to it, but I did, and we did. And we're going to roll with it as I pull up the page. Lawrence Central, 29-1. Lake Central, 26-4. First appearance in program history for the Bears. First since the 90s for Lake Central. Let's just keep going with what works. Courtney, we'll let you take the lead.
When I watched Lake Central play, and Lake Central is a team that we've talked about ever since the beginning of the tournament. Back in the sectionals, we were talking about the kids on their team, talking about the Riley, I'm going to butcher her name, but how do you say that? Yeah,
Malosnik.
Nia Bishop, Isla Krieger, all those kids, and being able to watch them and really follow them this tournament, like those kids are lighting it up. They're shooting the ball so well. And then I've also been following, Lawrence Central has been playing really well. I've watched them really in the second half. What I've been watching is how do they respond when they're down. And I think that they've really shown, and some other kids have stepped up on that team. And so I'm going with the shoes. I'm taking Lawrence Central. You guys look good in your shoes. Walk up on stage and get your blue medals in these, girls.
Nice. Very nice, Courtney. Josh.
I love it. That's going to be hard to follow. I love Lake Central's story. I think they've had a chip on their shoulder all year. They feel like that it's they're playing for each other. They're playing for respect. This is a true team. If you look at their stats, like everyone is kind of in that like 7 to 10 points per game, and they don't care who gets the credit. And they're going to come to this game with something to prove. I think I mentioned this on the pod yesterday, like watch the first quarter of the game, because if Lake Central is able to throw strikes and not get passes deflected, I think they will be in the game. But for me, I've been on LC the entire tournament. I just think, with their length and their pace of play and their athleticism, and they're so talented. And with Durkee leading the way, I just think they're on a mission. And, I expect LC to be cutting the nets down Saturday night.
Lawrence Central, LC.
Oh. Lawrence Central. That was like a little suspense there. That was like a cliffhanger.
Thought maybe you'd turn heel on us. Danny, go ahead.
I also love the Lake Central story. And Joe Huppenthal, I mean, I've gotten to know his kid brother, Chris Huppenthal, pretty well. And Joe Huppenthal has really made a name for himself as being one of the best coaches in the state. And I think we've really had that narrative kind of leading all the way through. I'm going to be very anxious to see what he implemented throughout the week to try to give Lawrence Central something that makes them uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, Lawrence Central has just imposed their will on everybody. I am picking Lawrence Central in the game. And I would say, I know there's the joke that Lake Central doesn't want us to pick them, but I don't think Lawrence Central does either. I don't think they need to validate this. I think Lawrence Central is another team that's LC versus everybody and has a chip on their shoulder. And whether you root for Lawrence Central or whether you root against them, I think we're headed toward a coronation. I think this is one of the singular best seasons that we've seen in recent years. I mean, the the 2020 Parish team at HSC, the 2023 Noblesville team with Shade. I mean, there's been some great seasons. But let's look at the historical significance of what could be starting. Layla Durkeep gets hurt at the end of the year last year, really derails them from the run. They end up losing a game late in the year to Warren Central, and then again the following week to Avon, and then get knocked off in sectionals by Warren Central after the Durkeep injury. With Durkeep, they've been untouchable. And I got to tell you, I mean, I did a little bit of research on this. In 2008, 2009, Courtney, this drops right in your wheelhouse because this is around your time. Around 2008 and 2009, I think those Ben Davis teams won like 58 straight games and 2 state championships. They had kids like the Goss sisters, De'Ara and Bria. You know, Bria was Gatorade Player of the Year, Miss Basketball, McDonald's All-American, Alex Bentley. You know, Dee Dee Williams, Jordan Huber, the role players were even really good. Lawrence Central not only, I think, is going to win the 4A state championship, but they're going to be the definitive favorite again next year because they return their entire bunch. Are we looking at the next great 2-year dynasty the way that we saw it in 2008, 2009? I have Lawrence Central, but I don't only have Lawrence Central over Lake Central. I have Lawrence Central over history.
Yeah, I mean, Layla Durkeep has just been unbelievable. Jayla Lampley, I mean, for her and Jayla Lampley, Durkeep and Lampley, like I always go back to this game, but it was after that Warren Central loss their sophomore year, and then just seeing them at the Marion County tournament, and just like you could see the pieces there. You could see how everything is building towards this moment, and it's just a special group. And they have some unsung heroes in that group too, like Mariah Kenter-Garrett, who we've talked about, and just what she does defensively for that group. And then Anaya McKenzie as well, an up-and-coming sophomore. It's a really special team. I was curious to see how they respond to games against Plainfield and Center Grove especially, because, I mean, that's the first time they've been tested, like, oh, this team stacks up. Because, I mean, even Lawrence North, for as good as they were, they'd already lost to them twice. And they lost in fashions that kind of make you wonder, you know, I don't know. I don't know if they can pull this off or if it's in their head or whatever. Center Grove wasn't the case. Center Grove was the perfect matchup for Lawrence Central to see where this team is at. And I think even Steven mentioned it yesterday when we were talking about it, of just everything you want to try and critique, or, you know, every single what if. I thought that was a really interesting perspective that he had. But just every single, like, even little what if or little things that you try to pick at with that Lawrence Central team, they've answered and addressed it in stunning fashion and really impressive fashion. On the other side, I mean, Lake Central, they take care of the ball really well, and when they do, they're successful. We saw it against Noblesville, where it was just 6 turnovers, and I think they did the same thing against Homestead as well. And it just, Josh went back to the thing about calling them a team, and after both games last Saturday, that's what Huppenthal went to, was a team. We're a team. He even spelled it out, TEAM. We're a team. We play together, and it is, man. I mean, it just, anybody on that team, everybody that Courtney mentioned, they're all capable of stepping up at any moment, and it feels like a kid like Nadia Clayton, who hasn't been super prolific offensively over the past couple weeks, could be on the verge of breaking out, like, who knows. And then Kennedy Burke, so I mentioned in the Players to Watch story that I wrote at the beginning of the week. I mean, her too. I was talking to a writer, Dave Funk, from up in Northwestern Indiana Times, and he even pointed out, he's like, this kid, you know, it just, she pops off every once in a while. She'll pop off with some huge shots, and that's exactly what she did against Noblesville when they're Lake Central just methodically moving the ball around the perimeter and finding these open looks and hitting them. There's something about that Lake Central team, man, and I know that Lawrence Central is the team of destiny. It kind of felt that way when how things went down last Saturday at the semi-state, but I tell you, I doubted Lake Central. I really did going into that Noblesville game because it felt like history was destined to repeat itself for the Millers. But after seeing Lake Central, the way that they're able to take care of the ball, echo what Josh said, I think if they're able to limit those deflections, limit the turnovers early on, that's going to set the tone, and I think Lake Central is going to pull the upset, stun the state, and I think
like
they're
it.
going to pull it out.
Wow, Hank.
They were my ride or die last weekend, as it turns out, and I don't know, man. Like, in all seriousness, I know this sounds like me being, you know, BSing and making an ass of myself, but I really do think that there's something about the way that they play together that makes a difference. And again, like, experience, like, we always come back to that, and it's going to play a role at some point. And I think that the state championship could be that moment, because regional 3 years ago, semi-state last year where they picked off nationally ranked South Bend, Washington, and this year, I mean, their road once they got out of sectional has been tough. Like, they had to go through South Bend, Washington, and then they had to go through Homestead, which is going to be the next hot thing and that big challenger to LC next year, and then they took out Noblesville, that kind of prohibitive favorite, and the team with that pedigree, and they talk a lot about respect, and that calling card, like I love an underdog, and I think that the way that they wear that on their sleeve and the way that they're able to harness it in such a positive way, I think is going to give them a bit of an edge Saturday night. And I think I don't know, I'm calling it now. I'm sure LC will come out, Lawrence Central, I mean, will come out and just do something crazy, and I'll feel like an ass by halftime, like the Evansville North game. But I'm riding with the Lake Central Indians because I love the way that team operates. I love the way that program operates, and Huppenthal is just, like you guys said, is just such a great coach. I think you give him a week to prepare for a team like Lawrence Central, a team that they've already seen. You may not be able to simulate the youth or the length that they bring, but you give a coach like that enough time, he's going to find something with the pieces that he has, and I think the Lake Central will pull it off.
Well, and if you think about it, like Lawrence Central, they came out slow against LN. They came out slow against Plainfield, and they came out slow against Center Grove. And in all three of those games, they were able to flip the switch. So, it's going to be interesting to see, like I said, in that first quarter, I think we'll see what kind of game we're gonna have here.
And two with Lake Central, it's like they can run their offense in such a way where if they're able to avoid those deflections like they did against Noblesville, I mean, those are minute-long possessions. And as somebody who loathes the shot clock, it makes me want to cry. But it's very effective against teams like that because you slow them down, you wear them out a little bit. You never know what can happen when that happens.
Yeah, I talked about the 58 straight wins about Ben Davis. They should have won three straight state championships. They were upset in the regional by the eventual state champion Carmel that year. They were led by kids like Chrissy Steffen and Danielle Havel, I think was her name. I mean, it's just like one of those teams. Like, and no one's ever heard those names, right? I mean, if you've been around for a while, you have. But this is a favorite weekend. Josh and I all of us were texting about it earlier today. I think each team has over a 65% chance to win. Lanesville even an 80% chance to win. So it was very difficult to really kind of grab on to one underdog. Josh did it with Gibson Southern, and Hank has done it with Lake Central. But I think before get the closing thoughts on everybody, I guess I would say this: my timeline is filled with, I support girls basketball or girls basketball this, or, I'm all for the girls in this. You have an opportunity this weekend to prove it. Okay. I read those tweets and you just don't know, right? Do you truly support it? I know Lake Central earned that pick with Hank, but I think they also earned your eyes. They earned the ability for you to see if they can knock Lawrence Central off. And I just picked that one example, but all of these teams, Brownstown Central, like, introduce yourself to these girls. They've earned it. I'm not saying that you got to go downtown, and I'm not saying that you got to park your car and walk in the winter and do all of that stuff, but turn the games on. Watch these. Watch these girls, because it's been a fabulous year. Hopefully you're more educated. Hopefully we're one of the reasons why you're more educated this year. But I'm going to watch all four games. Our horses. I encourage everybody to prove it and to actually watch girls basketball on Saturday.
One other quick note before I add to what Danny said about Lake Central. I'd be remiss just in case anybody didn't read the pick story, where I'm sure I'm going to mention this, but props too for Lake Central for driving around and playing the schedule they did. I mean, they went all the way from the northwest corner of the state all the way down to Bedford. The drive down to Bedford sucks from Indianapolis. I can't imagine what it's like coming from St. John. So to go down there and play that, and then to turn around and play out in the Hall of Fame Classic after going home for Christmas, things like that. They played Valpo, they played South Bend, Washington, and West Lafayette at the beginning of the year. Like, all that stuff matters, and it just – a team like that deserves to be rewarded in my eyes too, for playing a schedule like that. Like, they scheduled tough, so tip of the cap to them. And again, because it's the social media age, and suddenly because you like one thing you hate the other, that's not true. Obviously, love the heck out of Lawrence Central as well. I mean, that is such a good team, and I echo Danny's point in that I think they're on the verge of something really special too. But tying a bow on this, I remember all three of us, I think at the beginning there'd be a texter on the show. We just talked about how crazy a year this was setting up to be. And here we are, and I feel like last week, where teams like Brownstown Central, Lake Central to an extent, picked off teams. Marquette Catholic is
Oh, we lost them.
Yeah, we did.
Gosh, it was getting good too.
He's back, I think. Hank, you're back, Hank.
Hank, you're back. Maybe not.
Did I cut out or am I back?
You're back. You're on.
Okay.
Huh.
Might be me and you, Josh.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
Hank.
Hank, you're back.
Did Touchdown Jesus get Danny too?
Yeah, it looks like it did.
All right, I'm gonna pull Danny from the screen. I don't know if it picked up on what it picked up on, but we talked at the beginning of the year about how wide open it'd be, and here we are. Teams like Lake Central and Marquette Catholic and Brownstown Central just kind of coming out of nowhere to earn their title shots last weekend. I think it speaks to the parity. And, I mean, sitting there yesterday at Media Day, I mean, Josh, we talked about this, and Courtney, I'm sure you've probably got an idea from your coach and you've just been around there too, just the rigmarole. There was a lot more media there covering the event, which is really cool. And I'm excited to see what that means for Saturday. And not just like we're being paid to shoot highlights or whatever, like legit, like newspapers, other online media outlets who write stories about these kids. So that's really cool in year 3, just to see how that's grown and people investing in these kids' stories, which is really exciting. 'Cause, I mean, when it gets down to it, that's why we're doing this, is to shine a spotlight on these kids, to help build them up a little bit, because they deserve it.
I agree.
Just a really cool thing.
That's been one of my favorite parts about this podcast is that, yes, we knew that Indianapolis was going to be a huge thing. They love their girls basketball, and that's where most of us are stationed, is on the circle. But I think that when you look at all the teams that are left, I mean, it's like every corner of the state is represented in some kind of way. And I think it's just great for the game. I think it's great for the coaches and the girls, like you said, to finally get credit, to be recognized as big time players and big time programs, because they deserve it.
Court, you got a closing thought for us?
My closing thoughts would be not only just the players that are going to be playing this weekend, but there are some really, really good coaches. I mean, all across the board, every single game, all 8 coaches that are coaching are really good at their craft. So if you're interested in coaching or just go and watch the coaches, look at their schemes they're using, and to all the players that are playing, stay focused on the game. Don't worry about the media stuff. Watch this and get motivated, but stay locked in on the game and then celebrate afterward. And if you happen to be, I was on the losing side twice. It's all about how you perceive. If you lose, it's to learn. So you use that for motivation going into your offseason. So do not, if you are one of those teams that ends up losing this weekend, that does not define your worth, and you just take it and you learn from it and just enjoy the process and the experience. It's an amazing time. Being down in Indy, it's a great facility to play at Gainbridge. So I'm super excited for everybody and super excited to watch the games.
Looking ahead for us in the show, I'm going to talk to Danny, but I think the hope is to do a show Saturday. Him and I are the only 2 in town, I think, are available for the game. So Danny and I are hoping to do a post-game live shows on Saturday and then do one Sunday, wrapping up the final 2 games of the day. We'll have highlights and whatever, but just keep an eye on the Twitter feed and subscribe to the channel for updates on that. Whenever Miss Basketball is announced, media voting is open until the end of the month, so it'll be a few weeks yet, but we'll probably do something with whoever receives the award. We'll try and have her on for a live show. Obviously, New Star will have that covered from start to finish. And then, we're kicking around some ideas for stuff on the offseason. I mean, the support for this podcast, as Josh can attest to, because I gave him and Danny some very specific numbers on what I expected and what I thought, hey, guys, this would be a good barometer. I mean, it's blown everything away. Even my most, overzealous or whatever, wildest expectations, they've exceeded with viewer numbers. And gosh, even the first couple shows when it was just the 3 of us talking before we added on Courtney, I mean, I was just like, this kind of feels like fool's gold, guys. Don't get too hyped about it. And then we added Courtney, and I mean, gosh, we're getting some that are up, 500-600 views. So it's amazing. It's incredible. We thank you all so much for watching, and thanks so much too for the kind comments. And honestly, even the people who give us trouble for the picks, I think it's hilarious because they're having fun with it. And it's nice to know too that people are reading, people are paying attention. So it's been really fun. We'll be back together in a couple weeks, and then it's been an honor doing this with you guys. Danny's gone, so we can talk trash about Danny, I guess. But no, in all seriousness, it's been really fun doing this with the 3 of you guys, and it's been an absolute honor. So with that, for Josh, for Courtney, for Danny, who is being held hostage apparently by Touchdown Jesus in South Bend, I'm Brian Haenchen. We thank you all so much for watching, and we'll talk to you again on Saturday.
Take care.